Today we're starting to read Plato, and we're going to be looking at Plato and his student Aristotle for a couple weeks in this class. And, at first you might say, what does this have to do with euthanasia or capital punishment or abortion or things like that? You'll see the connections over time. Those were not quite so big, hot-button issues for these people back in ancient Greece as they are in our time. But the ways in which they think about things, they provide us a structure. And it's a complicated structure that has been used over and over again to think about ethics, to think about what kind of lives you want to live, what sort of actions are good or bad. We're starting the Republic. You're not going to read any of other Plato's works in this class. Although if you're interested in that sort of thing, come and talk to me after class and I'll tell you where you would read those sort of things. And we're not going to read the whole of the Republic. We're just going to read parts of it. And you notice that I've also, not only are we going to read parts, I've actually given you condensed versions of the text that have, like usually 3 or 4 pages that you can print out that will focus on particularly in class because, in an hour and 15 minutes can we go through an entire chapter of a book? Probably not very deeply. We want to focus on some things. And we're going to focus on some things in this class differently than we would in an intro to philosophy class, where it's more general. This is ethics, so we're going to focus really closely in on certain issues and certain conversations. I'll do a little bit of introduction, but before we do that, we're often going to start out class like this with sort of a brainstorming exercise and then going somewhere from it. So this is a term that you've heard your whole life, justice. When you hear that, what sort of associations does it have for you? What comes to mind? And anything is okay.
Equality.
Quality?
Yeah.
Equality.
Equality.
Okay. What else?
Justice.
What's that?
Everyone getting what they deserve.
Okay, very good. Let's put that.
Freedom.
Getting what deserved. Freedom?
Yeah.
Because we often say freedom and justice. And, we have these associations. What else? Maybe a few more things. Yeah.
The law.
The law. Yeah. I know some of you are CJ majors. Criminal justice is tied in with how we enforce the laws, how we punish people. That's a particular part of justice, right? What else? Anything else? You feel justice is a good thing, a bad thing? Does it make you feel warm and fuzzy when you hear about it, or cold and prickly, as we used to say back in kindergarten? Anybody want to be treated unjustly? I could give you an F. Even though you do all the work, that wouldn't be very just, right? Nobody wants that. Yeah?
Honesty.
Honesty. Okay. Notice that a lot of these are values in and of themselves that we connect with justice, freedom and justice. Is freedom the same thing as justice? No, but they're connected somehow, aren't they? Is honesty the same thing as justice? It might be in some cases. What's your last name?
Collins.
Collins, okay, good. But it's not exactly the same, is it? Getting what is deserved, that's actually going to be one of the definitions of justice we're going to look at today. Equality, that's not one that we're actually going to look at today, but that's tied in with a lot of people's understanding of justice. When do you think you started noticing justice and injustice first? High school, you think? Before that? Yeah.
Having a little brother.
Having a little brother. Okay, how did that come up?
I don't know, just everything was not fair.
He would claim that everything was not fair? You would claim that everything was not fair. Looking back at it, do you think it really was not fair? So you have the experience now. Notice what we're doing here. Remember how we talked last class about McIntyre and plain persons and theories? We've got this big general concept, justice, and then in your life, a particular, a narrative. We have a particular situation. You and your brother, and what was unfair? The way the candy bar was divided, or the chores, or
I don't remember exactly, probably chores.
yeah. No, this is how we think about justice in the first place. We don't think about justice in, what is justice? Let us talk about that. The way these guys are at the beginning of the dialogue. They're actually sitting down to have an intellectual conversation because these guys like to have intellectual conversations. We start thinking about justice or right and wrong a long time before that, when we're little kids. We have a sense of something being violated in certain circumstances. Often it's tied into the quality or fairness. The kid who the teacher likes the most gets 2 candy bars, but you only get 1. How do you feel when that happens? What do you think when that happens? What do you say? How do you behave? Imagine you're 4 years old now. How did you behave? Because I'm sure something like that happened to you. What did you say? Probably cried a bit, or yelled, or showed anger in some way. Why were you angry? Why wasn't it okay with you? Because it's not fair, right? You appealed to something in a particular circumstance, with something broad or something universal. And then they would say, they might give you a reason. Well, it's okay for little Johnny to have 2 candy bars because he's my favorite, and favorites get more. You want more candy bars? Start acting like my favorite. That might have been your response. Or the teacher might have said, oh yeah, I shouldn't do that sort of thing. I better set a good example for you. Takes away little Johnny's candy bar. Or maybe they want to be punitive. Fine, nobody gets a candy bar, right? But these sort of issues of right and wrong come up for us as very early kids. As soon as we start having some sort of sense of what's due to people, what they deserve, including ourselves, and what we ought to be giving to them. Think back for a moment to your childhood. How far back can you remember, first of all? Can any of you remember like when you were 3? Can you remember when you were 4? 5? Is 5 a good cutoff? Did all of you do something that you shouldn't have done when you were 5 that you can think of at this time? Like, I remember punching my mom. God knows why I did it, We were just sitting there, and kids have these sort of come out of nowhere sadistic impulses, and I hit her in the arm, and she said, ow, don't do that. That's wrong. And how do you think I felt about that? How did you feel when you did something wrong? You probably did something less drastic. You felt you violated something, right? You broke something. If you didn't, then probably something was wrong. Like if you've done a lot of bad things and you don't feel any remorse about it, you're probably a sociopath. And you should probably keep that to yourself, because if people find that out, they're not going to want to have anything to do with you, right? Like sociopaths are dangerous. But most of us, probably all of us in this class, have a sense of right and wrong. And it's kind of instinctive, and we're often kind of sloppy about it. We often don't know exactly how to apply it. So let's think for a couple minutes. What are some things that are right? Just off the top of your head. What's something you ought to do?
Help others.
Help others, okay. What else?
Tell the truth.
Okay, tell the truth. And somebody else had their hand up, yeah. Say again? Show compassion. Okay. Anything else you can think of? These are good things to do. I'd like to be with somebody who does these sorts of things. That's not what makes it right, the fact that I, like them. What else? Is this enough to get by? So long as you help others, tell truths, show compassion, that'll get you through everything you need. What else do you care about? Let's say you are stuck with a roommate. How many of you had roommates? Almost all of you. So some of you may have had a good experience, some of you may have had a bad experience. How many of you had a good experience? Okay. What about your roommate in their behavior? Did you like? Did you look up to? Yeah.
They're respectful.
Respectful. Yeah. Being respectful. Let's go to this side. What are some things that are wrong? Shouldn't do. They're bad to do. Yeah.
Lying.
Yeah. Shouldn't lie. Yeah.
Take things.
You don't just mean taking things at all, because that's a chunk.
Not
Right?
like steal.
Okay, taking things, let's say, without permission, which we call stealing, yeah. What else? Yeah.
Causing harm.
Causing harm. What's a really big way of causing harm?
Killing somebody.
Killing, yeah. What else do you think of that's bad, that you shouldn't do? Think of how many of you had a bad roommate? Any of you had a bad roommate? Only a few of you? Wow, that's kind of good. The bad roommate, what did they do? Did they do anything besides lying or taking things without permission? That's a big one for roommates, right? Especially like things in the fridge. Causing harm, or hopefully they didn't kill anybody. What else did the bad roommate do? What else shouldn't you do in life? Yeah.
Just not being considerate.
Yeah, okay. Being inconsiderate. I mean, that's lower on the scale than killing somebody, but it's still a bad thing, right? It's not really much of a response if you say, hey, you're an inconsiderate jerk to somebody. They say, at least I don't kill somebody. They're still bad. What else do we say is bad? It's interesting, if you think about, say, the Ten Commandments. There's a lot of thou shalt nots, and that a lot more than there are thou shalt. And like any other religious code, they tend to regulate certain things. Stealing is always one of them. Who can take what things? What belongs to who? So it doesn't matter whether you're a Jew, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, stealing's wrong. Causing harm. It tends to be qualified, right? There's some people you can cause harm to, or some situations where you can. Other situations where you're not supposed to, right? Killing someone. Every single religion regulates who can be killed and who can't be killed. When force can be used, deadly force. Being inconsiderate, what do you think that might kind of fall under? That's a behavior thing, right? You can be inconsiderate with your actions. You can also do things with words too, can't you? Well, that falls under lying. Thou shalt not bear false witness. So I mean, you shouldn't go into court and swear to tell the truth and then say so and so killed somebody. It's extended a bit wider, not to lie, right? What else gets regulated that you can think of? It's interesting it doesn't come up in this class. There could be a variety of reasons for that. What else? Thou shalt not. Commit what? Murder? Yeah.
Adultery?
Yeah, and now, we don't talk about it in those terms in our popular culture, do we? We don't say, so-and-so is an adulterer. We tend to think of it in terms of cheating. cheat on, say, a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend. If you're in a committed relationship, you're supposed to be committed. And if you break the commitment, the other person could say you're unjust, you're doing the wrong thing, couldn't they? Matter of fact, they do. We have whole TV shows built around that premise. We have TV shows built around the premise of catching the person in the act. Like you've all seen that Cheaters show, right? At one time or another. And you notice what do they do? They never contest that cheating is wrong. What do they say? Oh, you're seeing the situation the wrong way. I'm not really cheating with you. They don't usually say cheating isn't a bad thing. They just say I'm not the person cheating. This is getting us to where we want to be. All of these things are what we call universals, right? If I say that you should tell the truth, I don't just mean in this classroom at this time, do I? You should tell the truth so long as you're in Dr. Sadler's ethics class because, that's what we do here. But once you get outside of the ethics class, anything goes. Does that make sense? Is that the way we treat these things? When you're having a conversation and you feel that somebody has wronged you, and you're trying to bring it to their attention, and you're probably fighting with them a bit because they usually, how do they react to that? Oh, I didn't do that. You're full of it. They don't want to hear it. And you bring up something like this and you say, you're supposed to tell me the truth, but you lied to me. That applies in other situations too, right? That's why they can turn it around on you and say, yeah, but you lied to me last week. It's a universal, so it applies across the board. The reason I'm bringing this up is because that's going to tie in with this guy Thrasymachus who we're looking at today, when we get to it a little bit later on. This notion of justice is just being what's in the interest of the stronger. Can you have universals like that then? I mean, think about what really matters to you, what your greatest values are, and what matters to other people, and what you can tell about their behavior. Does everybody see these as universals, or sometimes they make exceptions for themselves? What's your experience? Have you ever made an exception for yourself when it came to lying? Lying was okay in this situation? Yeah.
Like, to save someone's feelings, people have to lie.
That's a real issue. That's something that ethicists, as well as ordinary people, debate a lot about and have different positions on. If somebody says, how do I look today? And you know that, telling them the honest truth about their appearance, which they're asking you for, they're inviting you to give, is going to crush their ego, and they're going to do poorly in a test that they're taking, which is important for their career. Is it the right thing to do to lie and say, you look great? Never better. That's a real live issue. And you can try to resolve that on a situation-by-situation basis. That's probably not going to be that successful. What you want to do is look to some sort of universals. If there are exceptions to lying, you probably want to know what those are before you head into any sort of difficult situation. What about killing? Is it ever okay to kill somebody? Any of you think that it is okay sometimes to kill somebody? I do. A few more hands go up when they find out that the teacher thinks it's okay. It's okay if you think that it's okay to kill people. I mean, so long as you don't think it's okay to do it for fun or, just off as a weekend thing. How many of you think that it's okay in some cases to kill people? You want to be able to outline which cases are those cases, don't you? You don't want to have to get into a situation and say, well, let me think about it. Yeah, in this case it's okay, and then not have any reasons why, and then the next case it isn't. So these universals really, really matter to us. That's all background for going into the Republic, where we're going to be concerned with this question. What is justice? So what I want to do now, for the next couple minutes, is just give you kind of an overview of what this text that I threw in your lap is. I'm going to assume that all of you have read like the first book of it. And why is it called a book to begin with rather than a chapter? Any of you know why these old texts are called books? You think the whole Republic's a book, right? Because you could go out and buy it. Before we had books that opened up, that folded, sort of like this, you know, we had scrolls, and you would actually read by rolling the scroll down. You can imagine how cumbersome that was. And to carry a book meant carrying a bunch of scrolls. So the Republic has X amount of books, because it's a certain amount of length. It took 10 scrolls to hold that book. So other texts may have 6 books, 2 books, 10 books, 100 books. That's how many scrolls it would take. So when you see book 1, just think chapter 1, right? Now, book 1, you know, it's being divided that way, not necessarily because that's where we should cut things off, but that was the length. As it turns out, there is kind of some thematic thing, and we're going to look at book 2 on Thursday, right? And that's going to deal with some slightly different issues concerning justice. But what else do you need to know about this? It's a major work by this guy Plato. It was one of his greatest works. It's important during your college career for you to come in contact with this. You may have already in a history class or some sort of core class. Have some of you read the Republic before? A few? Okay. What kind of text is it? It's what we call a dialogue. Where have you guys seen dialogues before? In other things you've read? I know you've read a lot of them by this time. What kind of dialogues have you read? Plays. Yeah, every single play is a dialogue. That's what it's got, you know, so-and-so says, then so-and-so says, and so-and-so says. Shakespeare is all dialogue. O'Neill is dialogue. You guys all watch TV? Watch movies? It's all dialogue, right? There's other things too. There's plot. The dialogues that we're looking at with Plato don't have plot. So the characters aren't talking to try to make things happen or to do things. They're doing something a bit different. They're trying to understand things. They're trying to convince people of things. So think about a play where nobody actually does anything. There you've got a dialogue. But what they're doing is, you know, sitting in one place and discussing something. It's sort of like a transcript. Do any of you listen to NPR on the radio? Hear these shows? Or you tune in sometimes to a sports channel and you hear the commentators talking and doing an interview with somebody. If you got a transcript, that would be a dialogue. And that would be more similar to this. They're talking about an issue and they're not actually trying to do anything or explain what the action is. They're talking about some sort of issue. In this case, the central issue is justice. What is justice? And they're going to explore this. You have about 5 main people talking through this. You have Socrates, and Socrates was Plato's teacher. In this dialogue, we take Socrates as representing Plato's position. As you go and read through the Republic, you're going to see Socrates going from questioning people to actually laying out some positions in the later books. In this part, he's actually just questioning them. He's trying to show if there's any problems with their views. Who are the other people? There's 3 young men that are named, Glaucon, Adamantus, and Polemarchus. Kind of funny names, I know, but you know, these are ancient Greeks. And they are sort of, think about them as sort of upper class, good character, young men who are rising in the world and are likely to take political office or, you know, conduct some important business. These are kind of the movers and shakers. And then you've got this other young guy, Thrasymachus. Thrasymachus is a foreigner. He's not from Athens. And Thrasymachus is a kind of person we call a sophist. The sophists were these teachers who would go around And they would say that they could teach you how to speak well, and that they could teach you all sorts of other things as well. But mostly what they taught was rhetoric, how to convince people. Turned out a lot of the rhetoric was just like, appeal to their emotions, or use this trick or that trick. And Thrasymachus sort of exemplifies that. If we go beyond this, what else is going on in this discourse? Why do we care about this in an ethics class? Why does this probably imaginary dialogue between these ancient Greeks matter to us today when you are going to have real careers and face real life choices that weren't even thought about back in ancient Greece? Well, because what they're doing is they're laying out different theories of justice, different ways of looking at what's right and what's wrong. And those still are valid. Those are pertinent today. Thrasymachus died back in ancient Greece. Thrasymachus' ideas are still alive today. The ideas that Glaucon and Adeimantus and Polemarchus, those are still around today. Plato's ideas are still around today. That's why we're reading through this. And you'll recognize some of these ideas in your own life if you think about it carefully. What we're going to do then, if we start out, we're going to ignore a lot of what's going on at the beginning of the dialogue. I went down to the Piraeus, and then I was with Glaucon, and they said, you have to come along with us. There were torch races. We're going to forget all that setting stuff. We're going to just call that blah, blah, blah. And you're going to put that out of your head for right now. It's interesting to read. I don't want to say that it has no value, but as far as what justice is, we're not so interested in that. What we're going to look at are two main things. One is what we could call, I'll put this on the board, a sort of conventional or common sense understanding of justice. And then another one is Thrasymachus' conception of justice. And let's call that, for the moment, might makes right. You guys have heard that saying before, right? Or another way of putting it, he who has gets. We don't say that quite so often these days, but if you think about it, it's not going to be a hard thing to relate to. So let's look at these sort of conventional notions of justice. And some of this is in those condensed texts that I gave you. These are selections from the reading. And this guy Cephalus leaves. Cephalus is the father of Adeimantus, and he's not going to stick around and talk. Now it's the young men talking to Socrates. And he says, what about justice? Is it to speak the truth and pay your debts? Is that it? Those are just things, right? Speaking the truth. When we did that listing of right and wrong, you guys came up with that right away. To pay your debts, is that important for being a good person? Yeah. Oh, I imagine some of you probably have college debts now, right? You have loans. Would it be wrong for you to say, I'm not going to pay those? Imagine that you could get away with it, because these days they don't let you do that. The reason why they're so tough on you guys is because so many people didn't pay their college loans in the past. They let them get away with it. But is that it? To speak the truth and pay your debts. And are there exceptions to that? Let's say paying the debts means giving people back what you owe them. So if I lend you $100 and I say, I'm giving you this for a week, and you don't give it back to me after a week, or you're doing a bad thing, right? You're not necessarily a terrible person, but you're doing something unjust. What if, he's got a classic example here, what if you give me your gun, and you say, I want you to hold on to this for me. It's not hot or anything, I haven't killed anybody with it, I just need you to hold on to it for me, because I can't keep guns in my dorm room. They don't let you keep guns on campus, right? And now you come to me in the middle of the night and you bang on my door, Dr. Sadler, I need my gun. And you're distraught. I say, why do you need your gun? I'm going to kill somebody. Well, in one sense, I ought to give you the gun, shouldn't I? It's your gun. You gave it to me with the idea that I was going to give it back to you, didn't you? If I don't give it to you, you're probably going to say something like that. You said you were going to do this. You said you were going to give it back to me. Would it be the wrong thing for me to do? Why? I see some people got it. Why would it be the wrong thing? No mystery here. Yeah.
Why would it be wrong for you to give it back?
Yeah.
Because it's about to kill someone.
Yeah, because you told me I'm going to kill someone. So there's a problem with this conventional notion of just, speaking truth. Paying debts. Giving things back to people. So he says, speaking the truth, paying your debts is not a correct definition of justice. Paul Marcus says, yeah, you're right. But Simonides says that it is. And when you hear about this Simonides guy, Simonides was a sort of popular writer at the time. So think about what Oprah says, or what President Obama says, or what who would be a good example? What Rush Limbaugh says. So imagine somebody with that sort of currency saying, but this does sound like a good definition. So Socrates says, okay, we have to think about this then. Some big heavy hitter thinks that this is okay. Let's think about this. So he says the repayment of a debt is just, and in saying so he appears to me to be right. And Socrates says, Simonides, after the manner of poets, an ordinary person who's trying to, compose something, would seem to have spoken darkly of the nature of justice. What he really meant to say, when we talk about paying your debts, is giving people what is due, or another way of thinking about that, what they deserve. That's a good understanding of justice, right? That's sort of our ordinary conception. You guys came up with that at the start of the class, didn't you? Giving people what they deserve. When you've gotten angry in the past because you think somebody has wronged you, they didn't give you what you deserved, you are appealing to this sense of justice. There's something to this, isn't there? What do you deserve at the end of the semester from me? Really, hit home example. Should I go home and, we're going to use grade books, so you'll be able to see all your grades. Should I just assign grades randomly? How many of you would like that if I assign grades randomly? I'll say, we'll divide it up across the board. We have 25 students, 5 A's, 5 B's, 5 C's, 5 D's, 5 F's. Who wants to shoot for that one? Well, let's make it chancier. Let's do 12 A's, 1 C, 12 F's. What do you think? Are you a betting person? What if I up the stakes? What if I said 15 A's, 10 F's?
60% chance.
60% chance, you're right. The house doesn't always win. How would you feel about that? Let's say you did get an A. Let's say we went along with that and you got the A. Would you feel you'd earned the A? Let's say in grade book you didn't actually have an A. You had like a C or something. You'd feel, oh, I got a lucky break. But you wouldn't feel like you got what you deserved, would you? How would you feel if you got an F under that arrangement? You'd be very angry, I think, right? This is crap. We shouldn't have done this in the first place. I don't know whose idea this was, right? That's what would come up, isn't it? These thought exercises are kind of good for making sense out of these things. How should I assign grades? What do you think? What about if I do it on the basis of who I like? Maybe some students will come to office hours and have nice chats with them. They get an A. Other students, I don't really know them that well. They should get a C. Is that fair? No? Why not? What's wrong with that?
Because it's not. You're just giving people, it's not what they deserve, depending on if you like them or not.
Yeah, I'm using another criteria. I'm not just like, reaching into a hat, but I'm using a criteria that isn't fair. My own personal preferences. So how should I assign grades? Yeah.
Based on the quality and effort of the work that we should.
That's a good way to put it, based on the quality and effort of the work. And this is stuff you'll be able to check in gradebook, which is kind of nice. We didn't have that when I was a student. And that tells you what you deserve. What makes you deserve a grade is the quality and the effort of your work, right? That's what made you deserving. Right now, nobody's deserving of anything, really. I'm sure they have teacher evaluations at the end of the semester, right? And you guys are going to evaluate me. I haven't earned any sort of evaluation yet. We're only 3 weeks into the class. We haven't really reached the point where we deserve very much. We do deserve some things. I deserve respect from you. You deserve respect from me. You deserve a teacher who shows up on time, who's prepared, who's read the text. I deserve students who do the same. Right now, we've got a good sort of rapport going with that, don't we? But that's because we're working with, we all have expectations about what we deserve. So maybe that's enough for justice. Socrates doesn't think so. Socrates starts asking all these questions. And he starts asking questions about friends and enemies. How many of you caught that? What do your friends deserve from you? Loyalty? All these other things too. You shouldn't lie to your friends or cheat on them or kill them or, steal their things, kidnap them, kidnap their kids, kidnap their parents, all sorts of things you shouldn't do with friends, right? Tell their boyfriend or girlfriend that they're cheating on them when they're not. It's a bad thing to do, right? What about your enemies? This may be a little bit harder to relate to because we don't tend to think in our culture too much in terms of friends and enemies, although we actually have that term that's been coined. Frenemy, have you guys ever heard of that? It's been used a bit. This is a friend, somebody who you're close with who actually turns out to be an enemy. And what makes them an enemy? They're trying to undercut you. They're trying to undermine you. You may have, this tends to be an issue more in women's circles than in men's circles. That's where that term came up, because of the warfare between women is often much more subtle and much more intense and involved than it is for men and boys, because men and boys tend to be a little bit, less on the ball when it comes to figuring out who their friends and who their enemies really are, and a little less on the ball when it comes to confronting them. Men tend to be a little bit more naive about these things, as I find out, even still today. There'll be moves that are made in conversations, and I'll talk with some of my female friends or my fiance about what took place, and I'll be like, yeah, that was a really nice time. Oh, you don't realize what that person was actually saying. They were actually, making a move of one sort. Really? I didn't know that. Well, people who intend to do you harm, or who are doing you harm, what do they deserve? How do you feel when somebody tries to hurt you? Yeah.
It's so hard because you want to do the same thing back, but at the same time, if you do that, it's wrong.
Yeah. You're getting into the sort of paradox that Socrates is bringing up. Seems like enemies deserve to be treated badly because they're enemies, right? And at the same time, is that the right thing to do? That's where one of these problems with the conventional notion of justice is just doing what people deserve is going to come up. That doesn't mean that it's totally off the charts, it's bad or anything like that. It just means that's not enough to get us by. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that my mom always told me you should treat whoever treats you badly, just like treat them good.
Yeah. Why?
Because you probably teach them a lesson, and I don't know.
Yeah, St. Paul says something along the lines of, you should be nice to them, or you should treat them well, because it's going to be like heaping hot coals on their head. Sometimes we get these words mixed up. It's going to make them feel really bad and teach them a lesson. Doesn't always work though, does it?
Yeah.
Sometimes they just keep taking and treating you badly. So, I mean, this is something that's part of our human nature. This is a normal response. Your normal response to somebody wronging you is to be angry at them. You get angry because you feel insulted or hurt or put down or something like that. All of you get angry. Your anger response is a sign of something to do with justice. You could be mistaken about it. We sometimes go off too easily and we get angry about things, that we shouldn't get angry about. We misread what the person is saying to us or doing. But when you get angry, it's because you feel that some injustice has been done. It's actually part of your body's normal response. You get ready to fight things. There's other responses. You can get depressed. You can feel sad. You can turn bitter. But this is going to be a problematic view. Let's look at the next view, which is Thrasymachus. Might makes right. Thrasymachus is posing a much more difficult problem. And I haven't gotten yet to uploading the things for these problematic moral approaches. There's a couple different isms that we're going to talk about off and on through the semester. Thrasymachus represents some of those isms. There's something we call relativism. Have any of you guys heard this term before? Relativism? Maybe in a sociology or an anthropology class? Or an intro class? Doesn't ring a bell? Relativism is the notion that truth or values really don't have any sort of objective basis. They are relative either to the individual or the group or the society, but one way of thinking about it is what's wrong for me isn't wrong for you. Maybe because I'm from a different social role than you are. Or let's say, we think about cultures. Are there some things that are considered wrong in our culture that are not considered wrong in other cultures? I think you can think of a lot of them, right? You can think of some things that are considered wrong in other cultures that are okay in this culture. Think about clothing, for example. In various Muslim countries where not necessarily the government, but the majority of the people are Muslim, in most of those countries, women's clothing is regulated, because of religious beliefs, right? And in some cases, they just wear a hijab, a headscarf. In others, you can see people actually clad from head to toe. Do you know the reasoning behind that? Does anyone know why women are supposed to conceal parts of their body? To prevent men from being lustful. There's some sort of moral reasoning behind it. Do we follow that? Is that the way our society tends to look at it? Put aside, rape cases where people say, yeah, she dressed like a hooker, so therefore she, deserved it or things like that. But think about ordinary life. Do we say, well, I think about all the women in the class. The only two people actually in here who have covered their hair are two men. One's wearing a baseball cap, one's wearing a hoodie. All the women in here, by the standards of, say, Saudi Arabia, are provoking men to acts of lust. They are transgressing against, the very structure of the universe. Do we feel that way? Well, maybe over in Saudi Arabia that's true, and it's false over here. So maybe it's good over there, and it's bad over here. Does that make sense? Really, if you think that through, it's one thing to say that that's the way they feel about it, and that's the way we feel about it. Does it really make sense to say it's actually true that it's good over there for women to be covered from head to toe, and it's bad to require women to do that over here. There's some problems with that. That's relativism. Another really problematic thing, and I don't really have an ism for it, is this whole notion of might makes right. Whoever holds the cards, whoever holds the power gets to decide what becomes right. And right and wrong is merely doing what, the people in charge, or the people who have power, the people who can hurt you, think is good. And doing wrong is doing what they think is bad. Another problematic thing that fits in with this is what we call egoism. And egoism is this notion that really all good and bad is what satisfies our desires, period. And it's going to be evaluated differently from different individuals. So it satisfies my desires. What I have to do is just what's good for me. As a matter of fact, if I can get things out of you, like let's say I could charge you, let's say I started charging you for grades, from an egoist perspective, if I wasn't going to get caught, that'd be a great thing to do. It wouldn't be so good from your perspective, would it? It might be, actually, if depending on what the cost was. Maybe people would be happy to pay for, an A or something. It would be a matter of negotiation. Would that really be right, though? Could right and wrong just be a matter of finding the balance point between how it feels for you and how it feels for me? Is that going to work? That's some of where Thrasymachus' ideas are going to head. So let's actually look at some of the things that Thrasymachus says. Thrasymachus says that justice is the interest of the stronger. And Socrates tries to make him clarify that. Do you mean stronger like, the bigger guy? Who would be the biggest person in here? I mean, physically, I'm probably the biggest because I'm overweight. Who would probably be the strongest person in here? I don't know. Who are athletes? Okay. It's probably between you two guys in the back because you both seem pretty big. So the interest of the stronger that way. You guys get to be the king and tell everyone what to do, and that doing what you say is good. Socrates says, "Is that what you mean?" Thrasymachus says, "Come on, you know that's not what I mean. Here's what I actually mean. Every place has somebody in charge, right? They're the stronger. Who's in charge in your household? When you go back home for Christmas? Mom or dad? Somebody older than you, right? Sometimes they'll say, this is my house, my rules, right? They let you know who's in charge. They're the stronger. When you have your own house, you get to be the stronger. You get to do anything you want. There's a comedian who talks about, having his dad over and messing with his dad by leaving the door open and the air conditioning on and saying, I am going to heat the hole outside because it's my house, and when you start paying for it, then you get to decide. But you're not paying this power bill. So, I'm not going to say anything vulgar, but he says some things like, something dad. Because apparently he was very angry with his dad for that sort of thing. But what was going on there? Dad was in charge. What about in our society? Who's in charge? Think about the classroom. You guys are sort of drilled into, I'm the professor, you're the students. We actually try to cultivate something to get you out of that a bit, to get conversation going and make you feel as if you own the class somewhat. But even the professors who encourage all this, call me by my first name, and let's form a big circle, and tell me about how you're feeling, and just come by my office hour anytime we'll have tea and that sort of thing. How are they when push comes to shove? Does that always stand up? In your experience? Had any professors like that? They're in charge, right? Who else is in charge of your life? It kind of sucks being a student. There's so many people in charge of you. It's going to get better as you get older. Who else is in charge of you? You have a coach. Your coach makes you do things, right? You have to undergo some sacrifices over, whether you get to go home for Christmas or things like that. That's somebody who's stronger, having power. The coach says you have to do that, therefore it's a good thing to do. Who else is in charge of you? In charge of me, too. We have all these government authorities, right? The cop on the street, if he tells me I can't go park here, I can't go park there. If he tells me I have to pull my car off and go through a checkpoint, what happens if I say I don't feel like going to a checkpoint today? I think I'm going to turn around and go the other way. People do that sometimes. They'll chase you down, especially this 9/11 stuff. Those are the more powerful. Thrasymachus is saying whatever is in the interest of the more powerful. So is that everything that the powerful tell you to do becomes good because of that? It's not just what they tell you to do. What is in the interest? What they want, what they desire, what they're looking for. That's what's good, and what goes against that is what's bad or unjust. Justice is just people doing what the stronger want them to do. So, think about it. We're a very powerful nation, aren't we? We spend more on our military than everybody else combined. We went into Iraq, and Iraq has a lot of oil, don't they? And when the Iraq War II first started, people were saying, we're just going to war to take their oil. Did we do that? We buy their oil, we didn't take it. We probably should just take it, shouldn't we? We're stronger. If they don't like it, we can kill them. If they want to resist, they should know that the stronger person gets to decide what counts as right and wrong. Again, this is Thrasymachus' view. Now, are there any problems with this? Can you think of any problems that Socrates raises? Yeah.
Because isn't what they say not be morally right?
That's a strong possibility. What they say could be morally wrong. So something would be both right in one sense and wrong in another sense. That gets kind of confusing, doesn't it? So it's not entirely right. If Thrasymachus were right, then that shouldn't be possible. You shouldn't have any conflict like that. Socrates says another thing, too. The interest of the stronger. The stronger always know what's really in their interest. Do they always make the right determinations about what the good thing for them would be? Let's say that we had something like a kingship. Let's say the king was really into drinking all the time. People like to drink. There's a reason why we sell so much liquor and wine and beer. People drink it because it's fun to drink. And if you do enough of it, then after a while it's no longer just fun, it's something you need to do, isn't it? Right? We've all had health class, so you know about alcoholism and the effects of it. Let's say the king is a drunk. Now the king wants to drink all the time. He's stronger. Is you supplying him with as much drink as he wants actually good for him? But he thinks it is. So then you would have to go against his requirements in order to do what he really needs, wouldn't you? And in one way, from Thrasymachus' position, what you would be doing would be unjust, wouldn't it? It would be wrong. In another way, it would be right. Again, it gets kind of confusing, doesn't it? It becomes very difficult to decide. Do people always know what's best for them? Do you think most people know most of the time what's best for them? Or do we make bad decisions about what our priorities? I know I do, still. I'm 40 years old. I'm a workaholic. What does that mean? Hopefully you guys won't end up like that. What does a workaholic do? Any of you had a workaholic parent? Or, boyfriend, girlfriend? What's a workaholic like? Yeah.
Somebody who's wanting to take with the work, they put too much time into the work.
Yeah, they don't balance out work, which is a value, we talked about that early on, and all these other values, they give work too high of a priority. I learned it from my dad. My dad was a tax attorney, and during tax season, we didn't see him for 4 months, because he would go to the office before we woke up, and he would come back from the office after we went to sleep. And he worked like a dog. And then on the weekends, he'd hang out and do stuff with those kids, and it was great. But I learned a way of doing things and a way of living that I'm still trying to figure out now. Am I really in touch with what's good for me? Intellectually, I am. But if I am a workaholic, have I integrated that intellectual knowledge with how I actually live? What do you think? No. I feel terrible about the fact that I don't have everything up in iLearn for you as I had planned to, as I actually had in my to-do list, because I didn't have internet connectivity when I needed it. Is that something I really should be obsessing about? What do you think? Yes or no? How many think I should be obsessing about it? I do. None of you do? How many of you think I shouldn't be obsessing about it? I'm taking that stuff too seriously. How many are undecided? Mezzo. If you are like that. Let's say I'm the one who's in charge now. I'm the king. Do I actually understand the structure of my desires and what's good for me? This is stuff we're going to explore the entire semester. You can't assume that the people who just have power know what the right thing is. Another thing that Socrates brings up with Thrasymachus, is it really the case? Thrasymachus says that those who are in charge, they exploit the weaker, the stronger just take the weaker and impose their will on them, and that's what justice is. Is that always the case? That is the case in some cases, isn't it? Have any of you ever been in a relationship where you felt exploited of some sort? Yes? No? Somebody was taking advantage of you because they could? How could a professor take advantage of students? I've seen it happen. I'm not just talking like, having affairs or stuff like that. They make students do all sorts of research for them, and then they incorporate the research into their own writings. Is that fair? Is that just? No. But according to Thrasymachus, that would be just fine, wouldn't it? The people who are in charge, the politicians, who make and break, the rules, they can set up the rules to favor themselves, can't they? If you go into politics here in our society, it's very difficult to rise. I don't know what it's like out here in New York. I come from the Chicago area. If you become a politician in Chicago, you cannot rise without becoming corrupt. You can't get promoted within the parties. You can't get things done without, breaking some people's deals and favoring other people. If Thrasymachus is right, that's A-okay. Like he says, the shepherd doesn't fatten the sheep, because it's good for the sheep, does he? The shepherd is fattening the sheep so he can kill them and eat them. There's actually a old saying about democracy. Democracy is two wolves and a lamb sitting down to dinner. Who are the wolves? They're not you. You're the lamb. And the wolves are the other two people who actually have some power and who are going to, try to get you to vote for them. So there are exploitative relationships, aren't there? And Thrasymachus is saying all relationships are like that. Socrates says, no, that's not the case. And he uses doctors as an example. Are any of you thinking about going to law school eventually, or medical school, or other professional schools? Now, you'll make more money when you do that, right? You will get something from people. Is that why you're going into it, to make a killing? Especially not doctors these days, because doctors have to take on massive amounts of debt, right? First 3 years are just paying off loans, usually. Why are you doing it? What's the point of the medical art? Is it to make money? Is it to hold power over people? Some doctors do that, don't they? Some doctors get off on the kick of playing God. But is that the norm? Is that what the art, as he says? Is that what it's about? The skill. What is it about? We'll put aside law and do something real easy with medicine. What's the point of going to the doctor? What's the doctor's function? Yeah.
Help people, make people better.
Yeah, make people better. We have preventative medicine, preventing disease, and then most of the time when people go to the doctor, it's not because they're doing preventative medicine. I'm a bad one for this too myself. I don't go to the doctor unless I am, what? Sick. Right, I get a sinus infection, now I have to find a doctor. Is the doctor really just there to make money off of me, or is he there to heal me? The better a doctor is, the more he's about healing, isn't he? What about government? What about holding power over people? Is the goal of that really just to exploit them as much as possible? There are politicians who exploit people. There always will be. Is that why people get into politics? Is that what the art of ruling is about? What is it supposed to be about? Yeah.
Well, I think Socrates says that the reason that they get the role of their jobs is to cater to the people's needs. So it's it would be
Exactly.
opposite of to think that the stronger should have taken into consideration only their own interests would be
Very good.
the opposite of what they should be doing.
That's very well expressed. And that is Socrates' position. Those who are ruling, if they're really truly rulers, if they're doing what the art is about, they are taking into account those who are under them, the weaker. And they're supposed to do what's best for them, not just what's best for themselves. And they probably won't actually profit very much. Anytime that you're in charge of other people, if you actually care about those other people, it's a lot of work and a lot of hassle. And usually they're not happy with what you do anyway, because you don't end up doing enough. But that's the point of at least some politicians. Let's think about what the world would be like if Thrasymachus were right. What kind of world would you be in? What should your practical reasoning be? We've used this word practical reasoning before. If might really makes right, what should you do? This is where I want to leave you. Let's say might really does make right. There are no situations where a doctor is training to become a good doctor, where a politician is training to actually manage people well. Let's say it's all about exploitation. What should you do? Yeah.
Get as smart as I can and make as much money as possible.
Okay. Let's put it in broader terms. Money, but money buys you influence and power. So make as much money, become powerful, and what do you have to do in order to do that along the way? You've got to find out who's actually got power and then suck up to them. Make them as happy as possible so that, they will bring you in. And then once you're in charge, what are you going to do? Stick it to everybody else. As a matter of fact, you should be the biggest thief you can possibly be. Because once you're in charge, hey, it's anything goes. You can indulge your desires, whether they're good desires or bad desires, and that's justice. What should you do if you are not able to climb the ladder? Then you'd better what? If you want to be a just person, how should you act? Let's just make the assumption, this is a bad assumption, because I'm hoping that all of you are going to rise in society, that none of you are going to rise in society. And society really is just this dog-eat-dog, exploit everybody else sort of situation, how should you behave? Yeah.
Marry into a rich family.
Marrying into a rich family. Yeah, that's an attempt to try to gain power. If you can't, you should just, be as humble as you can possibly be and let the rich, the powerful, the popular do whatever they want to do and help them out. You get to marry into a rich family by meeting rich people first and sucking up to them and hanging out with them and being their yes man and, saying, you're right. And maybe facilitating all of their things. If they want drugs, help them get drugs. That would be a good thing to do according to Thrasymachus. So we're seeing what a theory actually looks like. Notice that's not in the text, is it? That's not in what we were reading. That's something that we're going beyond and reading into it. Those are the implications of it, the practical reasoning. We're going to look at this again, something similar with what's called the Ring of Gyges, next class. Socrates demolishes Thrasymachus. Thrasymachus is going to quit talking at this point. Adeimantus and Polemarchus and Glaucon are going to make the problem even more acute. So we're going to pick up with that next class. I'll see all of you Thursday.